Hello, 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 and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today, we have another episode for you all. It's going to be a bit of a shorter episode. There wasn't as much that I was in the mood to cover today, frankly. So, we have information from the Federal Reserve. Jimmy Kimmel got fired, guys. That's like headline news for me as far as I'm concerned. I've been trying to get Jimmy Kimmel fired for years now, and it's finally happened. And then Antifa is a terror group now within the United States, according to President Trump. So we have so much to cover, so much to get into. But before we do all that, make sure you're following me on all the other social media platforms. They are scrolling across your screen right below you. Yeah, so follow me on there. Keep an eye out for new things coming out. I know I keep saying new things are coming out, but they will be. I promise. I promise. They're in the works. They're in the works. I'm a very busy person, so there's a lot that we got to do. There's a lot we got to get into, and yeah, let's get right into our very first story of the day. This comes from the Daily Wire. So the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates after months of pressure from Trump. So as you know from this picture, the president is trying to get the Fed to lower interest rates for several months now, and the Fed has finally done it, at least a little teensy tiny bit. It's better than them going up, that's for sure. If you watched this show before, you know I would say lukewarm on the Federal Reserve as far as they as an organization go. I do not think that they are out to get Trump in any way necessarily. Do they have the best interest in the country? I'm not sure. I look at them as the independent agency that they're supposed to be, and I trust their judgment when lowering or raising rates to keep the economy in line. There are a whole bunch of nerds who work in the Federal Reserve, guys. Like, if you've ever met anyone who works for the Fed, there are a whole bunch of nerds who work inside there doing stuff. So, anyways, so the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates by a quarter of a percentage point on Wednesday, well, a whole quarter, following increased pressure from President Donald Trump. In an 11-1 vote, the Fed policymakers approved a 25 basis point cut. Stephen Moran, the newest Federal Reserve Board governor, who was appointed by Trump and approved by the Senate earlier this week, was the lone member to dissent. Kind of crazy, right? So Trump appointed this brand new Federal Reserve member. He was the one person who voted against lowering the rates. So it's almost as if maybe the Federal Reserve actually isn't out to get Americans. They actually are just genuinely looking at the math and doing what they believe is mathematically correct. So I'm just saying, right? Like we can sit here and say that the Fed is out to get the president, is out to get Americans, but I say to those people, the one dissenting vote in this was a Trump appointee, right? You would think that if Trump appointed them, that they would want to lower the rates, and they would want to do the policy of the president. But it turns out maybe that's not the case. So where was I? So was the lone member dissent advocating for a half point cut? Excuse me. So he wanted a higher cut than I need to finish reading my paragraphs. But I feel my point still stands in that if you wanted a half point cut, why wouldn't you have voted for a quarter point cut? If you wanted to be more than what it was, why wouldn't you still have voted for the quarter point cut? Just saying. So the rate cut is unlikely to satisfy the president either. Trump predicted earlier this week that the Fed would approve a big cut. Quote, "It's perfect for cutting," Trump said on Sunday. "We're doing well in everything. Energy is way down. Groceries are down. Almost everything is way down." In a social media post on Monday, Trump called on Fed Chair Jerome Powell to cut interest rates now and bigger than he had in mind. Housing will soar. In a statement following its decision, the Fed pointed to slowing job gains and noted that inflation, quote, "has moved up and remains somewhat elevated. Uncertainty about the economic outlook remains elevated," the statement added. The committee is attentive to the risks of both sides of its dual mandate and judges the downside risks to employment have risen. Federal Chair Jerome Powell again brought up uncertainty surrounding Trump's tariffs during a press conference Wednesday afternoon, saying, quote, higher tariffs have begun to push up prices in some categories of goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen. Quote, our obligation is to ensure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem, Powell added. The rate cut is the first one that the Fed has announced since Trump was sworn in for his second term. Inflation, which the Fed closely monitors while considering rate cuts, has remained around 3% year over year. Inflation is currently at 2.9%, which is above the Fed's target of 2%, but the rate has remained under 3% since February. Mortgage rates also dropped to a 3-year low on Tuesday ahead of the Fed's interest rate cut. CNBC reported the average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage fell 12 basis points from Monday to Tuesday, down to 6.13%. So I feel that we're spending a lot of time looking at interest rates as the key reason why housing is so expensive or why people can't afford housing right now. The reason why people can't afford housing right now is because we don't have enough housing units. We literally do not have enough housing units in this country for the demand that they're needed. And that might not be across the board, but certainly, so take Florida, for example. The housing market in Florida has shot to the moon since COVID happened, right? Because so many people have moved to Florida. Right? They do not have enough housing units in Florida to accommodate all the people moving down there, right? And a lot of people who moved to Florida would have been just fine purchasing a condo or renting an apartment or living in a townhome or any number of other housing solutions that were not simply single-family detached housing. But the entirety of Florida is basically single-family detached housing, unless you're living in like downtown Orlando or downtown Miami, and that's not where a lot of people move to. A lot of people move to the suburbs, and there's just not a lot to be had for other housing styles out there. And don't get me wrong, I love me a single-family detached house. I love me a white picket fence with a nice lawn and everything, but that's not the solution for everyone, and people need housing regardless. And there's a lot of people who have spent more money to purchase a home, whereas otherwise they would have been just fine staying in a condo or staying in a townhome. So, or even like a smaller house. And it's caused prices in Florida to just like skyrocket. And that's been seen in a whole bunch of different areas of the country. So I think that we also need to have a conversation saying, hey, if we want to get housing costs down, we need to build more housing. And we especially need to build more housing that is geared towards people who are bringing in less money. So, for example, most people will take a downgrade on their house, right? So if housing prices go up, they will take a downgrade on where they're living to save money. So if I'm living in a 3-bedroom apartment, right, that costs me $2,000 a month, if my rent goes to $2,500 a month, I will downgrade to a 2-bedroom apartment, because I probably didn't need the 3rd bedroom anyways, for $2,000 a month, right? Versus going up the ladder and paying more money for what I had, or going up the ladder and paying more money for something I don't need. But if you are someone who's at the very bottom of the housing chain and your rent goes up, you don't have anywhere to fall back to, right? So you just have to eat the price increase, versus someone who's making a lot more money than you are is able to go down a tier in housing, or it's easier for them to eat that price increase. Versus if your rent goes up and you're only bringing in maybe $2,000 a month, and your rent goes up from $500 to $800, that's a pretty big portion of your check you're bringing in every month that's now going to paying for your housing. So I think that there is several solutions that need to be implemented to get our housing situation under control. But that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother story. But good on the Fed. We have to give good where good is due. Lowering interest rates is good for people, and happy that the Fed has done it at this point. Even if it doesn't seem like that much, it's going down, right? I'd rather it be going down than going up. So that's all I gotta say about that. Let's talk about Jimmy Fallon, or Jimmy Kimmel. Excuse me, not Fallon. Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel, who hasn't been funny. Has there ever been a time when Jimmy Kimmel was funny? Now that I think about it, I'm not sure. So, from the New York Post, Jimmy Kimmel reportedly effing livid over ABC polling live as Trump cheers great news for America. Jimmy Kimmel is reportedly absolutely effing livid over ABC's decision to axe his late-night talk show following backlash to his remarks about Charlie Kirk's assassination. Well, President Trump cheered the move as great news for America. The comedian, 57, was left fuming over the network's Wednesday decision to suspend him and pull Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air indefinitely after he unleashed a hateful triad against the gunned-down conservative activists during Monday night's monologue, sources and the producers told the Daily Mail. So Trump tweeted, "Great news for America. The ratings change Jimmy Kimmel's show. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel's show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent. The worst ratings, even than Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, who total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it NBC. President DJT." Oh my god, so funny. So, quote, "Absolutely effing livid," one producer told the outlet about how Kimmel took the news, adding that the pissed late night host is meeting with the network. Quote, This is clearly the government overreaching. There is no such thing as free speech in America. If the government can lean on companies to stop any content they don't like." Sources told the outlet that the network's decision is the last straw for Kimmel, who is now actively looking to break out of his contract and end his relationship with ABC. Quote, "Jimmy is pissed over the decision to suspend him and the show, and he isn't going to take this lightly, as he is actively looking for ways to get out of his contract," the source said, with another insisting they've never seen Kimmel this angry. Kimmel came under fire when he said the MAGA gang was trying to score political points off Kirk's savage public execution. Disgusting. Quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang trying to characterize this kid who killed Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it," Kimmel said during his monologue. Absolutely disgusting. I would like to point out something here that I don't think a lot of people have said. It may not seem like it, but we are winning. We the people, we the free speech advocates, we the conservatives are winning. I'll tell you why we're winning. Can you imagine someone like Jimmy Kimmel being fired in 2021 over some of the disgusting things that were said about Donald Trump? Can you imagine someone like a late night host being fired in 2022 or any time around then, when we felt like our movement was on life support, when Make America Great Again was fighting for its life in the ICU? Can you imagine someone like Jimmy Kimmel being fired for it? No. They were on top. They thought they were untouchable. And today, we have risen from the ashes. We are a phoenix rising from the ashes. We are a red phoenix rising from the ashes. And we are winning once again. Sanity is winning in this country. So good on ABC. ABC should have pulled his show. There's so many things that Jimmy Kimmel has said in the past that, like, I'm just like, how is this guy still on air? He's just not funny. He's just objectively not a funny guy. I'm sorry, he's just not. He's just not a funny guy. There's so many better comedians out there who are so much funnier than him. And by the way, the comedians that are actually funny are not the ones on SNL. They're not the ones hosting late night shows. They're not the ones on network television. They're the ones doing their own thing. They're the one still going to stand-up clubs and doing stand-up. They're the ones who have their own brand, who are posting on TikTok. Those are where the actual funny comedians are, right? Not on any of the network television, I can tell you that. SNL hasn't been relevant for like 10 years now. It's insane. So, good on ABC. Congratulations. You got rid of an urchin from your network. Now, to suggest that this was somehow government intervention is just objectively false. So what did Fallon, or what did Kimmel say? I keep calling him Jimmy this is, I get to the Jimmy's confused. Jimmy Kimmel, that's who we're talking about. He said, quote, "This is clearly the government overreaching. There is no such thing as free speech in America if the government can lean on companies to stop any content they don't like." I'm assuming that's Jimmy Kimmel. Maybe it's the source. I'm not sure. I wasn't entirely clear. It was either the source or it was Jimmy Kimmel who said that. It might have been the source. Either way, to suggest that the government had anything to do with Jimmy Kimmel's firing is completely absurd, just objectively false. The government had nothing to do with this. This was Jimmy Kimmel saying some frankly heartless things about a man who just lost his life in a public execution, frankly, for standing up for his free speech rights. And you have the nerve to go out and say that, oh, my free speech rights are under violation because I got fired from my company because I said that this was all the MAGA gang. And, this wasn't actually that bad that, Charlie Kirk got shot. No, it's not. It's not. And you don't have free speech rights from the company that employs you. You don't. You have them from the government. The government can't fire you for saying stuff in public, right? The government can't do that. But ABC can. And, Jimmy, you don't look good for the ABC brand anymore. You're an urchin. Glad to see you go. Sayonara. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. All right, our last story of the day comes from Blaze Media. Love that picture of Trump. Looks great. Trump designates Antifa as a major terrorist organization and can likely make the label stick this time. Antifa is a decentralized and narco-communist military group that has long threatened lives and property in the United States as well as in Europe. It inherited its name, violent reflexes, and much of its symbolism from stick with me here, folks. Anti-fascism, actin. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Pardon me. Pardon my American dialect. But it is the paramilitary wing of the Communist Party of Germany in the late 1930s. So, Antifa, communists. Got it. Cool. So, amid the Black Lives Matter riots, and just 20 days prior to a Trump supporter's murder by an Antifa thug, former Attorney General Bill Barr told Blaze Media co-founder Mark Levin, I didn't know Mark Levin co-founded Blaze Media, that Antifa is, quote, a revolutionary group that is interested in some form of socialism, communism. They're essentially Bolsheviks. Their tactics are fascist. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination by a coward whose ammunition was reportedly engraved with Antifa slogans, President Donald Trump signaled a renewed desire to bring the weight of the American Republic down on the violent leftist groups. Love it. That is a strong president right there, folks. If you didn't watch his message after Charlie's assassination, you should go and watch it. Great public speaker. Donald Trump has this great way of being able to talk to the humanity within Americans, while at the same time making you quake in your boots if you know you're a criminal. I don't know how he does it, but he does. It's amazing. Trump went the distance on Wednesday evening, announcing that he is designating, quote, Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. Quote, I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices, Trump added. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The FBI has in recent years declined to designate Antifa or any other organization a domestic terrorist organization, partially in fear of infringing on First Amendment protected speech. This unwillingness on the part of the FBI helped frustrate Trump's efforts to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization during his first term. There is, more than one way to skin a cat. While various Republican lawmakers have unsuccessfully attempted in recent years to create an official domestic terrorist organization list and put Antifa on it, Secretary of State Marco Rubio can, with relative ease, designate the group as a foreign terrorist organization under Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Kyle Schneider, a senior analyst at the Center for Security Policy, told Blaze Media the mandate on Monday that an optimal approach would be to identify a number of foreign Antifa groups, tie them back to an international Antifa network such as the International Anti-Fascist Defense Fund. Then you go after US-based groups that are also tied to that international network, and so you build a series of designations that way. Now you could argue that I think it would be legitimate for a single terrorism designation against Antifa as a foreign terrorist organization, said Shielder maybe. If you try to designate Antifa just as a single movement, what I suspect you'll find is that the bureaucrats will say, quote, "We don't know what that is. That's not a thing that exists." So, this is fantastic. Antifa, I all my life I remember Antifa. All my life in politics, I remember Antifa being a big issue in the sides of many Americans. So I think it's fantastic that we're going after them. Same thing with designating a lot of these Mexican drug cartels as terror groups. It changes the designation, the way we handle them as law enforcement. So I think it's fantastic. This is a massive win for the American public. It's a massive win for sanity everywhere, and a massive win for protecting Americans. I've always felt that Donald Trump is the president that protects Americans. He's doing it by sending National Guard troops to different cities across the country to get crime under control. He's doing it by ending wars. He's doing it by bringing peace to the world. He's doing it by having peace through strength. He's doing it by taking out Iranian nuclear facilities. Now he's doing it by keeping the American public even safer by designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. So that's all I have to say about that, folks. This has been a great episode. I appreciate you all sitting here with me, chatting with me, having a hangout with me as I read some of the news that's happened today. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. If you don't know already, this show goes out every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. We are in season 3 right now of this great show. If you missed episodes, you want to go back and watch old episodes, please do that. They're all up on YouTube. They're all up on Rumble. Please go and watch them over there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday. We will have even more to cover. Make sure you're following me on X, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, all the platforms. Go and read my writing on Substack. That's all linked in the description down below or in my bio. Go and find all of it over there. I will have a new YouTube video coming up very soon talking about that article that I wrote, and I will be starting on a brand new article starting very soon. So be on the lookout for all of that coming up shortly. And with that, I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. Have a great weekend, folks. Peace out. Bye.